For me, success looks a little bit different. Success looks like contentment. Success looks like being good inside of myself. I decided to wear hijab because I could see the world and specifically men in the world starting to like objectify my body. And that was when we started the Ask a Muslim project, where you know, we talked to people on the streets of Massachusetts.
Hi, this is Lauren Engel of Sidewalk Talk. Today I'm here with Mona HAYDAR.
Hey, what's up?
Really good. So your parents moved here, moved to Michigan from Syria?
Yeah, actually they started out in Chicago in 1972, or in 71 I think actually. And then they ended up in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, so how much of your family moved here from Syria?
Just my parents.
Oh,
yeah,
so
my
they
mom
met
was
back
19
there?
years old. Yeah. And my dad had just finished school and they moved out here.
For what?
My dad's work. There were job opportunities here. It's like, you know, brain drain. So he did well in school in Syria and Damascus, and he was a doctor, and so it was like if you did well, you had an opportunity to come to this country, and he did.
How about your mom?
My mom actually is amazing. She, you know, went to high school, came here, had 8 children, and then went to college.
Oh my gosh.
Helped to found a school and still teaches at that school 20-something years later. So
I'm getting like goosebumps by you telling me.
yeah, she's a badass. She had, you know, like 8 kids and then decided to go to college when literally no one else in the community around her was doing that. And she was like, yeah, I want to learn. I want to be educated, and, you know, like didn't have a lot of support from the community, but she was like, this is what I want to do. And she's like been working, yeah, for 20-something years now.
And do you still have strong ties with your family in Syria?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I grew up going to Syria. I'm wearing a Syrian dress right now.
I love it, it's so pretty.
I just, you know, for me it's all about being connected and staying connected to your people and, you know, making sure that your people are okay.
What are your parents' personalities like? Like, who are you more similar to?
I'm a lot like my mom. I mean, every time she's like, you know, like, calm down, chill out, don't do this, don't do that. I'm like, it's your fault. You're the one who like broke the mold and like, you know. So it's kind of like, you know, it's her fault that I'm a little bit of a rebel. I don't really like follow the rules, you know. And so in some ways I'm a lot like her. Yeah, but you know, like I grew up swimming in the lakes in Michigan with my dad and like riding bikes with him, and so I get a lot of like my outdoorsiness. Like I married a farmer, and my husband is a farmer. He's into like urban agriculture, food justice, food sovereignty, all that kind of stuff. And like, you know, that's kind of my dad's fault, because growing up, you know, we had an apple tree in the backyard, like a very like cushy sort of suburban life in Flint, and he had a garden in the backyard, and our yard constantly looked like shit because it like, he was like, what's all this land for? We're gonna grow food here. Meanwhile, all the neighbors had like manicured lawns and like, you know, we were the weird Arabs on the block, so. Dang, that is an amazing olive.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Speaking of plants.
Did you have identity problems growing up?
I wouldn't call them problems, but I feel like, yeah, I was conflicted a lot. You know, there was always a lot going on. A lot for me to like navigate and manage. You know, like never wholly human, never fully human, never seen as like, yeah, I was like a little Arab girl in Flint, Michigan. I didn't really
like the only one in school?
No, actually, you know, like I mentioned that my mother helped to found the school, and so it was like, I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, I didn't fit in with the black kids in high school, I didn't fit in with the white kids, I was always other, but I also in some ways didn't fit in with the Muslim kids because, I don't know, I just wasn't really interested in the like typical aspirations and like what typical success looks like. So I wasn't really interested in like going to graduate school and like doing a job that made you 6 figures and like, you know, that kind of life. I don't care to have like a big house and a fancy car and like, I care about enjoying my life and having a good time. And for me, that doesn't really necessarily look a certain way, you know, like, so I feel like that's true in a lot of immigrant communities, you know, where you're taught to get the very best education and make the most possible money you possibly can and send money back home and all that. But I don't know, I just feel like for me success looks a little bit different. Success looks like contentment. Success looks like being good inside of myself. And you know, like, I lived off grid for 3 years and didn't have running water, and I always say that that's like the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah.
So for me, you know, like, you can eat dandelion greens and you can live off of like rose hips and berries that you find in the wilderness and mushrooms, and so like at a certain level, like all of this stuff that we have, I don't know, like identity is wrapped up in the stuff we have. You know, and I feel like my identity, or I'm trying to make my identity wrapped up in something else.
Yeah, I love that. What were you doing in your free time when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mentioned the apple tree. I was a major tomboy, shorts and like t-shirts, baseball caps, and...
Oh, you were like really into sports?
Yeah, skateboarding, rollerblading, snowboarding, climbing trees, falling out of trees, you know, bike riding through the neighborhood. Like, I was a major tomboy.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a good time.
But you liked school, right? You took it really seriously even back then?
No, I mean, I don't like school, actually.
Really?
Yeah, no, I was never like a great student. Like, I feel like I'm smart, so I can get by not doing very much, not trying very hard. But, you know, I'm just like, oh my god, this tree is incredible.
Oh yeah, this is huge.
Holy
Looks like a small
shit.
plant, but like magnified.
It really is, it's like a planet. Wow. Okay, sorry. I really like trees.
Oh yeah.
In case you can't tell.
What kind of music was played in the house?
I mean, none, really, if I'm being honest.
Wow.
Yeah, I grew up in a house where like general music was forbidden. There was a certain kind of music that was permissible, like percussion-based Arabic music that was, you know, glorifying God, kind of like gospel music. So that was kind of allowed, but yeah, I mean, music was kind of like a weird thing, and so for me growing up, I didn't really listen to music. And it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I was like, I really like music, and you know, I think I want to try my hand at it and like see if I can figure it out and like speak that language, because it's not a language I grew up learning or knowing.
But you didn't always wear a hijab, right? It was only when you were biking one time?
Yeah, that's why you know the story. Yeah, I mean, I was like 11 years old and I was riding my bike through my neighborhood, and it just kind of hit me that I was ready. I was ready to start wearing the hijab, and there was this, it was like this weird moment where I just felt like I knew, you know? It's like hard to explain. I just knew I was ready. And I went home and I told my mom, and she was like, are you sure? This is like not an easy thing in this country. And I was like, yeah. And then we had a big old party and it was a great time.
Do your sisters also wear, and does she wear?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's kind of like everyone in your family, whereas you weren't like the only one who was like, okay.
No, it was all of us. You know, but like I had an aunt who didn't, I had like a bunch of my cousins didn't, and so it wasn't like everybody, but it was definitely like a choice I made, you know, a conscious decision. And I feel like if I had said I don't want to wear it, my family would have been okay.
Oh wow.
Like nobody would have been like, oh, you're never allowed to leave the house, or like whatever the stereotype is, you know, it would have been okay.
Did you feel like a drastic change after you wore it, like mentally, and also how people look towards you?
You know, hijab is a really funny thing. In some ways, I feel like I decided to wear hijab because I could see the world and specifically men in the world starting to like objectify my body and like see me and perceive me as a sexual being and object, and it was a way where I was like, no, like I get to decide that for myself. I get to be like I get to decide the parameters of my sexuality and who can like look at me and decide like how sexy I am or not, you know? And so a few things happened in my childhood where I just felt like I was ready to like put up the boundaries and to say, like, this is for me. You know, like my sexuality is a power that I wield, that I get to say and decide for myself. And it's not just like for every dude in the world to just like be able to, you know, dice and slice and decide for me about my body and like have access to it and like be permitted to see it and whatever. Anyway,
I love that.
It's a lot.
So what happened after you graduated high school? Did you go straight to the University of Michigan?
Yeah, actually, I really wanted to go overseas to go to Damascus, Syria, and my mom was like, no. There, you know, like I mentioned before, there's in the immigrant community like a real emphasis on like elevating your status in some ways and like educating yourself and you know, like as they might say, like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever, given that you have any boots, right? But the whole thing is that I wanted to go overseas and study in Syria, and my mom was like, no, you got to go to college first. And so I went to college. I finished in 3 years. And then I moved to Syria, and it was great.
What did you study again?
I studied English at the University of Michigan at Flint, and then I went to Damascus, Syria, and I studied Islamic studies and Arabic. And then I traveled for a little bit, and then I went and lived off-grid in northern New Mexico.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Why did you want to study English?
Because it was like the easiest way I could get my degree and the fastest.
Oh, did you actually like it a lot though?
No.
Oh my god.
I mean, like, I like learning. I love the process of learning and knowledge, but I hate, like, I'm not a fan of like rules and like somebody telling me that I have to do this in order to do this next thing. You know, I kind of just like, I like things out of order in some ways. This green is really pretty.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
What kind of career did you think you would have at that point?
So I've been doing poetry for 15 years. So I've always been an artist. I've always done art. I've always done poetry. So, you know, like doing music isn't a huge divergement from that.
Also, like when you were in college, were you already putting out music?
No, I was putting out poems. I was performing my poetry and making a living doing it. I published a book when I was 18 years old, and yeah, you know.
And were your poems back then kind of the same topics that you are in early lyrics now?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's all related to identity and like, and relationships and God and spirit and you know, the earth, everything, yeah.
When you first started like reading out your poetry or writing that, did you feel that you were sharing such a vulnerable side of yourself?
You know, the first time I ever performed my work, I failed miserably. I got up to the mic and nothing came out of my mouth, and it just struck me what power it was to have like a microphone in front of your face and just to have like people's attention. And I think that really shook me and startled me as a young person. Like, who am I to speak to all these people? And I just froze and nothing came out of my mouth. And thankfully I had really supportive and beautiful friends who were like, no, you need to try this again. And so, wow, this is really pretty too. Dang, LA. Stunning. Anyway, yeah, and so like I tried again, and you know, I realized that like vulnerability is power, and so I kind of fell in love with spoken word and poetry and like the fact that you can speak your heart and say things that don't necessarily make sense like rationally, but like that people can feel it, you know, they can feel what you mean or what you're intending, because poetry is like very subtle. It's not like an obvious thing, you know. You're speaking, it's almost like poetry is like you're speaking a vibe, you know, you're articulating a vibe in some way, and like whether or not people pick it up, it's like if they're on the right vibe, like if they're on the right wave, like they'll pick it up if it's meant for them, you know. So it's like trying to articulate something vibey, something that's not like physical, material. So it's like a feeling.
Yeah.
It's like a feeling. It's hard to like talk about your feelings in some ways.
Did your parents already like all this poetry that you were doing back then?
They were like okay with it. You know, like nobody in my family is like so supportive of what I do. But nobody is like actively trying to stop me. Maybe one person was, but I don't listen. No shade. You know, like I know it comes from a place of love. Like they just want me to be successful, and they want me to like do things that I'm gonna be safe. You know, because like doing this kind of stuff puts you in a spotlight, and people say terrible things about me and my family, and like people, like I get death threats.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. It's like, because I dress the way I dress, like you want to kill me? Like that's just weird. You know, what is your life, bro? Like, anyway. Yeah, so I mean I know that when they have criticisms, they're like, you know, we want people to take you seriously, like you just got your master's degree, you know, like let people take you seriously. So, you know.
And you moved to the like top of the mountain because your like really close friend passed away, right?
Yeah, so when I was 20, actually it was my 24th birthday, I up and left my home and moved to northern New Mexico. It was the top of a mountain. It's called the Llama Foundation, and I lived there for 3 years. But the day I arrived was my 24th birthday. It was exactly 4 weeks to the day that my best friend had passed away. One of my best friends had passed away and taken her own life, and you know, it was just a very challenging time for me in my life, because I was at a point where I was like, either I'm gonna like stop living like she did, or I'm gonna start living, and I need to make a decision. And I just kind of knew that my life had to change, because up until that point, you know, I was kind of like afraid of really being myself, afraid of really living. And in some ways her death like challenged me to live, to really live, you know. Yeah.
And what were you doing at the foundation?
You know, I worked in the garden, I worked in the kitchen, I helped serve retreats. Like, it's like, you know, you could come up and take a yoga retreat there, or take a meditation retreat, or like all kinds of different stuff, you know. So I was helping to facilitate the retreats there. How
did you find out about it?
I was really interested in something called permaculture, and they had a permaculture internship at that time, and so I was really interested in doing that. But I had already planned for that summer gigs for that summer. I was planning on going to Morocco and Spain and England, and I already had all these plans, and so I only had 3 weeks. And so I was like, you know, I can't do the internship, but at least I want to go and check it out. 3 weeks turned into 6 weeks. I went and traveled. I came back, and eventually I told my mom, like, hey, I want to move to this mountain. And she's like, no, like, you're not moving to the mountain. Like, what are you, stupid? You know, like, we left Syria so you could have like a comfortable life, and here you are trying to move to a place where there's no running water, there's no toilets, there's like, you know, like, what are you doing? You want to live in a dirt house? Like, what is wrong with you? And when she saw it, when she finally came and visited it, she was like, oh yeah, I get it. But you know, basically she was like, over my dead body. Like in those exact words. That car is awesome. That little Toyota van with those animals sitting inside. I love those guys.
What careers are your sisters in, or brothers?
You know, my family is really amazing. My siblings are all like really, really intelligent. really articulate, really smart, really successful. I have 7 siblings, and they all do all different things, like doctor and lawyer, a PhD, a nurse. You know, my sister is in the film industry here in LA, and you know, like tech and business, and they're all like very, very successful people and have done well for themselves, you know, and I'm over here like, you know, is my check gonna clear? Kind of like a starving artist, you know. But I love it. I love what I do, and I wouldn't trade it for anything because like I'm happy, you know.
What was the next step after the work at the foundation?
Yeah, after the Llama Foundation, my mom was like over my dead body, right? And then I was like, I told God, I was like, you got to take care of her. If this is really where I'm meant to be, you have to change her mind. And literally I called her, and she was like, you know, I don't know. I was like, Mom, I got into the Llama Foundation. They're going to let me live there. And she was like, okay, so when do you move? So that's just to say that prayer works. God changed her mind, and I didn't have to like fight with her about it because we'd had like some crying matches and fights over it beforehand. Oh, the shade is nice though.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Anyway, so like I lived there for 3 years. I met my husband there.
Oh.
He was the first person I met when I got there, and then I met my child, who was born from my body, and he was born there, and then we left. We went up to Mendocino County in Northern California. We tried living again off the grid up there, but we realized that living off the grid with no people and a baby is really, really stupid. So we left. We went to Michigan, actually, to Flint, to help my parents. My father has Parkinson's disease, and so we were helping him to transition into a new lifestyle. You know, they needed a little bit of help at home, so we were helping to facilitate that. And then we moved to Duxbury, Massachusetts with my mother-in-law. So we were like family hopping, my family, then my husband's family, my partner, co-parent. And we lived with her for a little bit. That was when we started the Ask a Muslim project, where, you know, we talked to people on the streets of Massachusetts, and it was right after the Paris attacks and the San Bernardino shootings and Pulse nightclub stuff. And so that was just like a weird time where we, you know, he had this idea to go out on the streets, and we did that for a hot minute. We lived out there, and then I applied to graduate school, got into graduate school. You know, like I applied everywhere, Harvard, Yale, out here, Berkeley, and I applied to all these different schools, and eventually I realized that the one in New York, the school I graduated from, called Union Theological Seminary, ultimately had the best program because I wanted to study with very particular people, one of whom was the Reverend Dr. James Cone, who actually recently just passed away. But I really just realized that liberation theology was what I wanted to study, and so I did that for 2 years. I graduated, got my master's in Christian ethics. It was during my first year of seminary that I was pregnant with my second child, and I released my first music video and song, and I went viral, and it was crazy.
How did you even find like producers or your whole team?
Yeah, I mean, I hit up this guy I knew in Flint, Michigan, Tune Olaniran, who's an amazing vocalist, performer, musician, artist. I hit him up and I was like, hey, I want to do an album. And he was like, okay, cool. And so we made the first 2 records, and it was super fun. We recorded at a place called Assemble Sound in Detroit, and it was amazing. The whole vibe out there is so cool, such a spirit of collaboration. We did that for a hot minute, and then, you know, he felt like he needed to work on his own projects and his own stuff, so we didn't do a whole album. We just did those 2 songs. We've co-written other songs at this point, but yeah, it was just those 2 that we did completely together. And since then, you know, I I worked actually with a producer duo out here in LA, and we did an entire EP together called Barbarican, and they're an amazing team, Karan Cole and JB. They, oh hey, we're back at this beautiful tree. That's cool. I like that you took us in a circle because I was not paying attention. But they're called Culture Shock Sound. They're a little indie label, and I love them. They're just like amazing, beautiful human beings, and we made the EP, and the EP is coming out on November 2nd.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, same. Actually, how did it click to you to do music all of a sudden?
You know, it wasn't like all of a sudden. It was sort of like, I feel like I've been moving towards that for a really long time. And just recently, about 5 years ago, I got serious about it, where I was just like, okay, I think it has to happen now. So something in my heart just like hit me, and I was like, you know, if I can do this, I have to. And so I tried, and dang, like the first attempt just like kind of blew me away by like the response.
Yeah, do you know even how it got out there? Like, did you have a PR team back then?
I didn't have anybody. It was literally just me posting it on Facebook, posting it on YouTube, and just like responding, you know. For like 3 weeks after I put the song out, I had press like contacting me, hitting me up, like, and I had nobody to help me navigate that, nothing. And eventually it was just like, dang, like the world is hungry for different kinds of representation, you know. Like I had these amazing twins, El Sawam from Minneapolis, Iman and Khadija, come out, and they were in the video, and like to see like beautiful young black women dancing and like doing their art so beautifully, so proficiently, so expertly, and then for me kind of like transitioning from poetry into hip-hop, and just like getting that affirmation from the world that yes, this is right, this is what I should be doing right now. You know, it's like just a level of affirmation in the world that like when you're doing what your heart is calling you to do as an artist, you can't miss the mark, you know.
How did you realize that you wanted to rap compared to like sing?
Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a singer. I can't sing for the life of me. I mean, I'm trying, I'm learning, but again, I didn't grow up with music, so you know, poetry is like a part of my soul. It's like a part of my being, my heart. So getting into hip hop for me, like rap is rhythm and poetry. You know, it's like you get into it, and then there's like a drum backing you, and it like that's just a part of me. It's a part of my DNA, you know. And like the impact of hip hop, the source of hip hop is so beautiful. It's about like unification, a celebration of like, you know, in spite of oppression, we're gonna turn up, we're gonna enjoy our life, we're gonna have a good time, we're gonna bring our peoples together, subverting the systems of oppression like white supremacy and you know, like these systems that are intent and hell-bent on keeping us down. We're gonna subvert that and resist that by like creating beautiful art, you know, and like coming together as people. You know, like just thinking about Africa Bambaataa and the origins of hip hop is just like, yeah, like I'm here for that, you know. And like growing up in Flint, that's just what it was, you know.
And how did you meet the people at WMA?
Yeah. WMA, so you know, it just sort of happened. I like knew this person and he put me in touch with them, and it was just like, yeah, I like you, I want to work with you all. Yeah, they're a cool team.
How would you say your music has changed since the early songs you made?
Woo! Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a steep learning curve. I'm constantly learning and growing and being challenged, especially by people I love, to make better art. Ooh! I fall on my face. make better art, more relevant, more conscious, more awake. So, you know, I'm just really blessed that I have such amazing people around me who love me and want me to have the best message possible for the world. Yeah.
How would you say you've grown as a person compared to when you were younger?
Oh, dang. Whew. I mean, I think the resounding message is definitely just that, like, you just can't take yourself too seriously. You know, like, narcissism is all the way over. Like, you know, if you're not here for others, and if you don't see yourself in others and others in yourself, like, there's just a lot of work that needs to be done. You know, we're here to be together, to live in a beautiful world that we craft together. And I think one of the major problems of the world, is that we're so separate. And difference is good. Difference is necessary. If the biodiversity of the earth shows us anything, it's that diversity is necessary and important. Difference is necessary and important. I'm not talking about erasing difference. I'm talking about erasing separation. The concept that we're separate. You know, like these trees that we keep walking by, they're so beautiful. And they are in some ways separate from the earth. But they grow out of the earth. Their roots are in the earth. You know, they occupy space that is in the sky and also in the earth, you know?
Yeah.
But they are not separate from the earth. You know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like for me, like, we're not separate from the earth. We're not separate from each other. We're 100% interconnected with everything and everyone at every time, at every moment. And that's just, the older I get, the more I know that and I feel that in my being.
I love that.
I love these shadows.
What would you say have been your biggest challenges so far?
My own ego. I mean, I think that's the only true challenge that exists for any human being, is to discipline that ego and to rein it in and to really just like learn and understand that we are so much more if we would just discipline those base desires and to like know that we are so much more beautiful than we can even imagine, you know, than we can even really understand or comprehend, because it's not intellectual, it's spiritual, you know, it's like, it's a deeper thing, so, yeah.
What does love mean to you?
Love? Woo. What does love mean to me? I mean, love is just like, I mean, like that's like the whole world, right? Like, love is the mother of a child, of a baby. Like, I've had 2 children, you know, so like, love is this unmanageable thing. It will not be stifled. It will not be contained. It's unconditional. Like, real love is unconditional. You know, love is this like ultimate force in the world that is the connecting essence between all of us at all times. I don't know. Like, that's a big question. I could talk for a million years just about what I feel like love is. Love is also discipline, you know? Like, the idea that, oh, you could just do whatever you want whenever you want, you know? Love can be difficult, you know? Love can be, like, strange and, like, why am I falling in love with this person? Like, what is it about this relationship that my spirit is being called towards, you know? Love is a challenge to rise above yourself and above separation. Yeah.
Last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
Love. Love, yeah. Generosity, kindness, creating bonds of community and togetherness. That's what my music is about. That's what my life is about. You know, that's what my whole shit is about.
I love this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So awesome.
That was awesome, Lauren. Thank you. I'm real tired though.
Oh yeah.
That's a long ass walk.
Yeah, it was a workout.